The Catholic Morning Show.
Welcome back to Iowa Catholic Radio. 17 minutes after the hour, and we are grateful you are making the Catholic Morning Show a part of your day. I'm your host, Bo Bonner. Elise has the news covered. Ayden and Alexia checking the weather and the boards. All of us happy you're here with us. In the second half of the show, we will have a liturgical year retrospective. It will be the end of the liturgical year coming up, so we thought it was a good time to think back and reminisce and talk about the future. But right now, let's turn to our first interview of the day. We have Adam Story, canon lawyer for the Diocese of Des Moines. Adam, thanks for coming on the Catholic Morning Show.
Hey, good morning, Bo. Thanks for having me.
Well, and we also want to say thank you because you were on a bit of a trip and you made it back just to be on our radio show. So we want to say thank you. What was the little trip you happened to take?
Yeah, that's right. I said, you know what? I have a deadline. I have to be back. So, but my family did. This was kind of a once in a lifetime trip. My whole family spent just over 2 weeks in Italy. Kind of traveling. We started in Rome and then started working our way north to Assisi, to Florence, eventually to Venice. It was a great adventure, a great trip. So we just got back to Des Moines last night.
You're like, sorry, kids, we could see more of Italy, but there's a radio show to do.
Exactly.
No, I'm kidding.
We had an audience with Pope Leo, but I said, we've got a commitment, and we took off.
It's very nice of you. No, well, we're glad to have you back. Glad that your family got to have such a wonderful trip. So to turn for today, we can talk about maybe a good illustration about how what is a sort of regular aspect of the life of the Church that in its own way has its own governing logic, also has an element within canon law that can show about how canon law often works, as it were, in tandem with other aspects of the Church. So what does the canon law have to do or say about the sacraments?
Yeah, well, how does the law and the sacraments work together? Well, quite a bit, and there's quite a lot that canon law has to say, and that might strike us as odd when you think, we usually think of canon law in the governing sphere, and we think of the sacraments in the sanctifying sphere, and so how do they fit together? Well, the law and the liturgy have always been connected to each other, and they've always the law has always been at service to the Church's sanctifying function. But, why does it go together? The first thing I would say is, the law helps us order our worship. It helps structure our worship. It helps order that worship to enhance and to help us enter into our relationship with God. And ultimately, it helps when we worship God well, and that ordering helps us worship God well, it leads us into our ultimate vocation, which is our relationship with God. So canon law really speaks a lot to the liturgy, to the sacraments, and this has been a part of the Church this has been a part of the faith since the very beginning. I mean, how much of the Old Testament is the Lord revealing to the people of Israel, this is liturgical law. This is how you are to worship me. This is how you are to enter into relationship with me. And canon law is distinct from that, in that it's not often divine law. It's often positive law, although sometimes it is expressing divine law. But it's serving the same end, which is really helping us, I think, correctly and effectively and fully enter into that relationship with God for which we're made.
Well, I think this is a good time to maybe note some of the words that we bring up talking about canon law, but that this the liturgy can help us think about like how there's distinctions to be made. So for one, right, we talk about justice, but giving each their due. But that also has to do with religion, which is the justice owed to God. So maybe we can talk about how canon law in regard to the liturgy pays attention to the justice that adheres or is important in religion. But then also you made a distinction between divine law and positive law. And I know by positive law, you don't mean just like happy law, Yeah. So what do we mean by, those four terms? Justice, religion, how does that have to do with the liturgy? And then what's the difference between divine law and positive law? And again, the liturgy as an example of this.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, that's a big question, but I'm going to do my best at it. But I think the justice element, I think you're exactly right. Giving to others what is due. What is due to God is our worship, our our obedience to what he's laid before us. And canon law helps kind of make those obligations of justice tangible. Okay, so like in divine law, the Lord says to keep holy the Sabbath. This is a commandment that he's given to us that we are to obey, right? And so in justice, we owe to the Lord keeping the Sabbath holy. How do we do that? Well, canon law puts flesh on that, and canon law through what we would call positive law. And positive law is just, it's man-made law. It's the authority, the rightful authority, exercising its authority and saying, this is what is required of you. So positive law in canon law says that we keep holy the Sabbath by fulfilling our precept to attend Mass on Sundays, right, and holy days of obligation. So that positive law is not arbitrary law, but it's given to us through authority to say this is how you're going to meet those obligations of justice. And, this works in the church, or it makes sense in the church because of the authority that Jesus granted to Peter and the apostles, the passing on the keys. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. This is that authority that's handed over to the church, which gives it the ability to make that positive law, which even though it is kind of its author is human, fallible individuals, it still is binding upon us.
And I think that that's one of the things people... So, justice in religion is towards God first, and we owe God worship, and so that's part of the divine law, right? Like that was set forth by God, as it were, in the reality of creation itself. But when it comes to how we do that, we make positive law, right, to enunciate, to show what it is that we're going to do when we try to fulfill this mandate of the divine law. And so in this way, canon law is also for us. It's for people in the pews, because instead of going like, okay, by divine law, you need to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy, and we go like, well, what does that mean, right? And then every person's left to themselves. Positive canon law goes, look, if you do these requirements these basic requirements, you can rest assured that you have, with the best of your intention, fulfilled what God has said. And that's the sort of ministerial aspect of the law, the positive law, is how do we sit down in an agreed upon way, yes, due to the authority the church has, given to it by God, that we can rest assured that we've accomplished something that we know we're supposed to do, mandated by the divine law.
Absolutely, and I think that's really well said, that having those laws is it serves us because it shows us this is how we meet those obligations of justice. It kind of puts meat on the bones. And there's been within theology, and this is a long-running critique, a critique of law for that reason where, doesn't this stifle the life of the Spirit, or doesn't this hold us back from the true freedom that a Christian ought to have? And in excess, it can do that. You can go too far. But really, I think it's a really human and a merciful thing to say, I'm going to help show you and help make it very practical for you to see how to live in relationship with me. Here are the guardrails that, of course, aren't the relationship itself. That's sort of the Pharisaical mistake. It's not the relationship itself, but it points us to that relationship and helps us enter into that relationship. That's a very human, a very pastoral, and a very merciful thing to have that guidance from the church.
Absolutely. So, to be housed in a place that, technically all of us, but that people who maybe have questions could ask you, that you as a canon lawyer would know, I need to go to, and in this case, it's Book 4 of the Code, right? Book 4 talks about this, the sanctifying function of the church. And that should be a reassurance to us. As we start to close up, Adam, I think, too, right, that there's maybe a difference between what you might call the liturgical law. So basically all the things that happen internal to the sacrament, and then sacramental law, which is all the externals, like the who, what, when, where, and why. And so ritual books maybe talk about liturgical law, and it's the canon law that talks about sacramental law. Maybe make a distinction for people between those, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I think you laid out that distinction very well, but Book 4 in the Code is really focused on sacramental law, which is kind of that broader category, as you mentioned, the who, what, why, when, and what circumstances for all the different sacraments. And then you have the liturgical books themselves, which is kind of the internal ordering of every sacrament. And that, too, is law, and it's an element of canon law, even though it's not in the code of canon law. Those are legal guides for how to celebrate the sacraments, how to enter into that worship. But that's the kind of traditional distinction. The externals is usually what we call sacramental law, and the internal ordering is usually what we call liturgical law.
And again, the ordering for the sake of, like you said, not like, so, when people, if you're in a discussion maybe with Protestants and they kind of have a misreading of Paul about rule following and things like this, the idea is not this is the order of life itself. This is, like you said, the boundaries that allow us to dwell in the country that is the faith, and that it's actually an act of charity to, everybody knows this with a child, right? It's actually charitable to let the child know what is expected of them.
Yes, I was just thinking this.
And if people think that's paternalistic, we do this with adults. No one looks at the stop sign and goes like, "How dare thee treat me like a child? Like I don't know how to drive." You're like, let's put the stop signs out there so that we all have good boundaries about how we're going to drive around.
Yeah, very well said. No, I entirely agree.
Well, Adam, again, thank you for cutting short your trip with the Pope in Italy to make sure to fly. No, thank you for getting back. Of course, busy, I'm sure, landing back in the States and getting things around. Thank you for taking your time today to come on air and talk about this distinction between liturgical and sacramental law, and just how it is that even something like the liturgy of the Church has been informed by canon law. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.